The holiday season is approaching us, which means it's time to knit approximately 10,000 socks and maybe another 2,000 pairs of mittens. Hi, hello, welcome or welcome back. I'm Seti, I'm a PhD student studying the Milky Way, and I'm also an avid knitter and crocheter. Today we're going to be covering 14 patterns plus a couple bonus ones that all have the theme of space and astronomy, but are also really ideal as gift knits for Christmas. This list is ordered based on, I guess, not necessarily complexity, but more so project size. So we're going to start off with smaller things that you could probably get done within a weekend, such as mitts or socks, although that will take a little bit longer. And then we're going to go to much higher commitment projects such as sweaters later on. So we're going to start off with mitts first. We've got two projects in total. The first one is the Meander Mitten by Lotte Gröger. What I really like about this is that on the back of the mitts, she's got this beautiful one-arm spiral design, which is something we actually do see in the Milky Way, such as within the phase spiral, which I won't get into right now. But that was what really drew me to this project, this sort of the spiral feature on the back. On the front, you've got a very simple checkerboard pattern, and that's really just to allow you to carry the floats around so you don't have to do any intage or working flats. In terms of the yarn recommendations, Lotte recommends using a sport weight or a 5-ply yarn. You've got quite a lot of options on the market, such as, I think, Big Bio. What's it called? BC Garn. They have one of their own sport weight yarns that apparently is really nice and soft. Opal do a really nice 6-ply yarn, so it will turn out a little bit thicker, but that could work to your advantage, especially if you want to make a very wintry mitt. But she recommends using the Lana Grossa Cool Wool Merino Superfine. I've not used that one personally, but I'm going to assume if it's merino, it's probably going to be very soft, which would be ideal if your gift recipient has, I guess, maybe like a very big sensitivity to like itch and textures and stuff like that. So I think that probably is going to be quite a nice choice. In terms of the yardage, it requires 183 to 199 meters of sport weight yarn, so it's quite on the economical side, if I do say so myself. So that will probably be, I'm thinking of 4-ply yarn, which is about 400 meters per 100 gram ball, but I know sport weight's going to be a little bit less, so it should take up just over half a ball of sport weight yarn if it's a 100 gram ball. So yeah, you will probably be able to definitely get these out of just one ball of each colour. The pattern costs around £3.50 and it has 3 sizes with she spelt it circumstances, but she meant circumferences. She includes 3 sizes with a 6, 7 and 8 inch circumference, hand circumference respectively. Next up is probably one of my favourite colourwork patterns I've ever seen on Ravelry, and these are the Space Mitts by Coney Knits. The rhyming threw me off there for a second. And these feature a really beautiful, I guess, sort of planetary and very celestial style colourwork motif on the front of the mitts, or the back, sorry. And then on the front you've got something that's a little bit more repetitive, a little bit, I would say, easier to remember, so a slightly easier motif on the front, although you could probably repeat what you've got, the pattern on the back, on the front and just duplicate it. What's amazing about this is that it is a free Ravelry download as well, so you've got this absolutely beautiful, spectacular pattern that Coney has handmade herself that she's just offering for free, and that is just such an amazing gift to everyone. What I really like about these as well is that they feature a really nice Latvian braid pattern which borders the 1x1 cuff and then the actual colour work. So you've got a really nice sort of border piece that sort of frames the mitts, in my opinion, really effectively and quite elegantly. She recommends using 4-ply yarn or fingering weight yarn, so you've got a really good selection online with hundreds to thousands of fingering weight yarns that you can use. She says that the mittens are knit using about 100 grams of fingering weight yarn, so a 50-50 split between the accent colour and the main colour. So now that we've finished with the mitt patterns, let's go on to the sock patterns, for which we've got quite a few to actually go through today. Most of these include colour work as the main sort of motif. in order to convey their sort of spaciness or astronomy theme, but one of them at the end does include cables instead, so that will be quite interesting to talk about. The first one is the Twinkle Socks by Leah Anderson. This is quite a simple sock pattern, but what I really like is that the colour work it's quite simplistic, but I really think it's very elegant, especially with it being so bright and contrasting against the sort of cool blue background, which kind of feels like stars in a night sky, which I think is just really beautiful. Another nice thing about this is that because the colour work is really restricted to just this small part around the cuff, most of the sock is actually going to be super simple and quick to knit up, so it shouldn't be too let's just say taxing of a project. But also the colour work only takes up about 20 grams of the accent yarn, as Leah has pointed out in her pattern. So this is definitely something you could get done with scrap yarn. So you could do like a mix of you could really splurge on the really nice background colour, use a really luxurious yarn, and then just use up some scraps that are appropriate for, you know, are very complementary to the background yarn, but you don't need to really splurge on using a whole skein for that, and instead you can just pick something from your stash. So I think you could get a really good balance there. The pattern is around about $5. Sorry, no, the pattern is $5, and it has 3 sizes available to fit a foot circumference of 8, 9 and 10 inches respectively. It uses fingering or 4-ply weight yarn, so you've really got a huge selection online, and there's such a big range of sock weight yarns that you can pick from. I know Malabrigo does a really good sock weight yarn that I'm sure that they have a really nice rich navy blue colour like this one, so you could go with that one, or you could go with, you know, very simple Opal's Uni 4-ply weight yarn, so you can pick whatever you want. Next up we have the Charmed Stars socks by Shay's Stitchery. There is a lot of alliteration there that was difficult to say. These are really beautiful. They're kind of like a step up from the Twinkle socks in terms of the colour work. So it is a little bit more extensive, and it covers a much wider width of the cuff, a length of the cuff, that's the correct term. But yeah, it's really beautiful, and I quite like how these stars are all sort of varied in shape and size as well, so it really does look it has a lot of variation to it. It looks quite complex. She recommends using the Cascade Yarns Heritage, which, if I remember correctly, is the yellow yarn that she uses for the colour work. And then for the background yarn, she uses the Sheepyshire Staple Sock, which she has quite a few different tones or shades of this colour that she's blended in to make a gradient, which I think looks absolutely stunning and is such a clever idea. It kind of makes it look a little bit like, I guess you're going from twilight to nighttime in a way. It's very beautiful. The pattern is available for $6, and it comes in 3 sizes, the small, medium and large. I'm not sure what those sizes correlate to. She hasn't given any details on that, although if I check her website really quickly, we can see if she's got any more information. Nope, she doesn't, but I'm going to assume that it can fit a wide range of sizes anyways. Now, if you don't want the colour work to just be restricted to the cuff, you want something really, really luxurious, and you want colour work all over the entire sock, well, I have the pattern for you. This is the Star Glimmer Socks by Yarnitas, which I think is a bit more of a big brand as opposed to an indie brand, mainly because they have their own house yarn, which they recommend. But these are absolutely stunning. So you've got a really nice sort of, let's say like purpley blue toned background, which has some slight tonal variation, which kind of reminds me of, you know, when you've got a very cloudy night, you can see subtle like variations in like the sky's background. It kind of reminds me of that, but it's also quite dreamy as well with the purple. And then on top of that, you've got the stars, which are very nice and varied and are all across the sock, with the exception of the heel and the toe and the cuff, obviously. This pattern comes in actually 2 languages, which is great. We've got Spanish and we've also got English. It comes in 3 sizes and is available for €6.50. With the sizes being, let's have a look-see, a 16.5 inch circumference, 19 inch circumference and 21.3 inch circumference, which I believe is quite similar to the second sock that we looked at, which was, no, the first sock, the twinkle socks. My conversion from inches to centimeters is a little bit off the top of my head, but I think it's roughly the same size in terms of inches. It's quite a little bit more on the yarn heavy side, so it recommends 200 to 400 meters of yarn. That being said, I am thinking they mean 200 per skein or per colour, and then 400 meters in total. So it will use up the equivalent of an entire ball of sock yarn, which they do recommend. They suggest using the Sparkly Deluxe Sock Kit de Yarnitas, which I'm assuming has a little bit of a metallic luster to it, which is really nice. I think that actually would work perfectly for socks that feature, you know, like a stellar theme, stellar colourwork theme. Although I will warn you that some metallic sock yarns, although they're meant to be yarns that go, you know, by your feet, by your skin, they can be a little bit on the scratchy and itchy side. So I would just be a little bit wary of that. If you can't access this yarn, a really nice alternative that we have in the UK is one of West Yorkshire Spinners' Christmas yarns, which is sparkly as well, called Silent Night. And this yarn's a little bit darker than the nice blue and purple heathered tones that they've got with the Yarnitas sock yarn, but it does also, I think it would be effectively very similar and will be a really good alternative. So we've got one more colourwork sock pattern. This is probably one of the most unique sock construction techniques that I have ever seen. This is the Himmelog half socks by Sita Steinmeier or Sita's Stockerier. These actually feature a heel outwards construction. So I've never seen this before in a sock pattern. Usually they're toe up or cuff down. So what you basically do is you're kind of doing, I think, short rows for the heel in a way that's not similar to the afterthought heels that we traditionally do. But then once you do that, you do some colour work and then you kind of graft the sock together. It's very, very interesting, and actually I have bought the pattern and I am about to knit it up once the yarn arrives. So this pattern is around £4.91 or 40 Danish kroner. It features 3 sizes going from a European size 38 up to a 46. So it does fit quite a wide range of foot sizes, and it does have about an 8% negative ease. She recommends using the Regia Faded colour, which I have used before, and I can definitely attest that it is a really nice yarn to work with, but any 4-ply or fingering weight yarn would work really nicely. I'm personally using the Coupnit socks, in the 4-ply weight range, and I'm using, I can't remember what the colours are, but one of them's like a really deep blue, and then one of them is a light blue that sort of matches tone-wise, called Chryso. So I'm going to be using those for my socks, but I will update you on how that goes later on. So we're now on to the final pattern, and this one is a cable knit sock pattern called Mermaid's Wall by Artisanitarium Designs. I can't believe I said that all in one go. I feel so amazing. But yeah, these are, well, they're not actually space inspired, but when I saw them, I immediately thought of spiral galaxies when I saw it, and it's it feels really cool when I get to see a very unusual cable design that you don't see very often, or a very unique cable design, and this certainly fits the bill in this case. So these spiral patterns are just absolutely stunning, and I'm really interested in definitely making these socks at some point within the next year or so, once I've finished all of my other knitting projects. And I might even pinch the design to self-draft something of myself, not for selling, of course, but something for personal use, because these spirals look absolutely stunning. So while the other socks that we had mentioned used a 4-ply yarn, or I think one of them also used sport weight yarn, this one actually calls for 10-ply, so this would be roughly a worsted weight, between a DK and an Aran weight, something a little bit more on the thicker side of DK, although I think a DK could work pretty nicely here, mainly because the needle size they recommend is a 3mm, so worsted plus 3mm, you're definitely going to have a very tight sock, which is ideal, but you could probably get away with a DK as well. It recommends about 200 to 300 meters of yarn, so still quite on the economical side. if I do say so myself, you could probably get away with 1 to 2 skeins of like, oh, I don't know, I've not used worsted before. Actually, this is worsted. This would probably take around 2 to 3 skeins of yarn, so not terrible by any standards, and it is quite a big sock pattern. It does go up to the mid-calf, so you'll definitely be very nice and warm with these. Moving on from socks, we've now got hat patterns. The first one that I want to talk about is the Whirlpool Galaxy hat by Hayley B.E. I think I have mentioned this before in a blog post, and I absolutely love this pattern. It is very directly space themed. It uses, you know, Messier 51, the Whirlpool Galaxy, as the main motif. And it is a free pattern as well. If you go onto her website, she includes the chart, and then also a very basic hat pattern for 2 different types of hats as well. You've got a more slouchy beanie style, and then you've also got a slightly more tight-fitting hat. She recommends using Cascade 220, which I think is a DK weight, if I remember correctly. It hasn't been listed on the actual pattern, but I think it is a DK weight, so pretty much any DK weight will work very nicely. I think Cascade 220 is quite a nice yarn, judging based on other people's projects that I have seen with my own eyes. The only thing I'd say about this pattern is that she recommends you work it in the round. However, the colour work is only on one side of the actual hat. So you would have to either carry the floats around quite a lot, or you will have to work it flat and work it as intarsia. So I'm not entirely sure about what's going on with that. Although that being said, you could probably centre, or maybe not, I'm not too sure. You can still use the chart for embellishing like other projects, and I might also pinch the chart for another sweater that I want to make. But I figured I should just let you see this pattern because it is really nice, and the fact that it is free is just absolutely spectacular. So if you want a hat pattern that has a spiral style motif that is a little bit more repetitive, I recommend the Swirly hat by Sarah Keller. This is a really nice hat that makes use of a gradient yarn background with a much darker accent colour. So it's kind of inverting the traditional colour work rules, if you know what I mean. It's a really pretty hat that features just a very simple 1x1 rib, and then you've got these really beautiful 2-arm swells, which is quite rare to see. So I personally really like 2-arm spirals as opposed to 1-armed ones. I mean, I like 1-armed ones, obviously, but I think 2-armed ones you can definitely justify as being more galaxy inspired. So she recommends using DK weight yarn. She personally used the Feederbrook Farm Entropy DK and Universal Yarn Fawning. Both of those are US based yarns, which are quite difficult to get a hold of in the UK. I know this from experience. So you would definitely have to make some alterations in the yarn choice if you're in the EU or in the UK like me. I would probably, I really don't know what I would go with. I might go with just Cascade 220 like in the previous hat pattern. But in terms of a gradient yarn, it's quite difficult to find one that's DK and is really smooth, like ombre style. So I'll have to think about that. Finally, we have the Starlit hat, which is by Kyla Shea Overbay, and I really like how that rhymes. But this is an absolutely spectacular pattern that features a very varying colour work pattern, so you don't have a lot of repetition, which is quite good if you get bored very quickly. And what I really like about this, very similar to one of the sock patterns, is that the stars are all different shapes and sizes, so there's a lot more depth in the colour work, if you understand what I mean. She recommends using a worsted weight yarn or a Templar yarn, which there are many different types. Heck, you can even use Lethlopi like I used for my jumper, and that could work pretty well. In fact, the colours that I use have the names Galaxy for the dark part and Milky Way for the blue part, so that would be a very fitting choice. I have just seen in the description that she says, the Starlit hat features many of the same motifs as the Starlit shawl. So I need to have a look at this shawl pattern and see. Oh, there we go. Second one on the list. Oh my goodness, this is a... Okay, I'm going to talk about this one right now. Okay, so we've also got now the Starlit shawl, which is the only scarf/shawl pattern that we have in this list. I'm sorry, but now we've got one. So this is the Starlit shawl, which complements the Starlit hat, and it features the same colour work design throughout the shawl pattern. So this looks to be a little bit more trapezoidal in shape, so you can definitely pass this off as a scarf. And it appears to be double knit as well, which is really cool. Okay, yeah, so she uses double knit for this, so this would definitely be a little bit more of a higher commitment project compared to the starlet hat. Although if you are a quick knitter, and it does use, well, she recommends sport weight for this specific project and worsted for the hat. But I would say if you sized it up a little bit and then shaved off a little bit in terms of the number of stitches on each side, you could probably knit this up fairly quickly, roughly. Could probably take a couple weeks for sure, but oh my goodness, this is an absolutely spectacular pattern. I am bookmarking this for sure. Okay, right, hats and shawls over. We're now going to move on to our final category, which are the jumpers. So these are a little bit more higher commitment, so hence why I'm getting this video out and published now, so that you've got plenty of time if you choose to make any of these. But most of these, in fact all of them, feature colour work as their main sort of interesting technique. So we're going to start off with the Stranded Alchemy pattern by Ella Coe. This is meant to technically be a top, but she does give different sleeve lengths and instructions for how to knit them as well. What I really like about this is that it's a little bit more subtle in terms of the sort of space and astronomy inspiration, and so instead it features more of a sort of celestial, sort of moon and stars colour work pattern around the yoke, which is a circular yoke. It's worked top down, so you start off with the neck, the collar, and then you work short rows and then the colour work, for which then you split it and work the body and then the sleeves. This pattern recommends using sport weight or 5-ply yarn, so it'll definitely be a little bit more on the thinner side, but I think you can definitely play around with that, and there are plenty of really nice sport weight yarns that I think would work perfectly for this. She recommends using the Java Fiberwork Silky Cotton, which I've not heard about before, but if I were to knit this, I would probably go with one of the Cascade 6-ply yarns, or I think Malabrigo Arroyo does quite a nice 5-ply yarn that has a little bit of tonal variation that I think would work splendid for this pattern. The pattern is $10.50 and it includes 8 sizes, so definitely very size inclusive, going from extra small to 4XL, which is from an 80cm bust to 120cm bust. Next up we have one of the coolest sweater designs that I have ever seen in my life, and that is the Talvia yoke sweater by Rita Heino, which features a really beautiful Aurora Borealis design around the yoke. So this is a circular yoke that is worked bottom up, and then around the cuffs of the sleeves and the hem you've got these really nice evergreen trees and deers as well, so it really looks like you're in like the Arctic Circle and looking at the Northern Lights. This features 5 sizes going from extra small to XXL, so there is definitely a really good size range there. She offers the pattern in both English and Finnish as well, and she recommends using Istex Letlopi, which definitely is probably one of the best yarns you can use for a nice rustic winter sweater. I used it for this, and I can definitely say it is one of the finest yarns that I have worked with. It's not all that itchy as well. You can definitely wear this on bare skin like I am and you won't feel much of an itch. Although if you are knitting this for somebody with sensitive skin, maybe stick to something a little bit more on the softer side. What would be really cool is if you could find an Aran weight gradient yarn that is like gradient in terms of it transitions from like greens to blacks, or maybe like greens to pinks and blacks, because the Aurora Borealis tends to be quite green and pink because of the nitrogen and oxygen in the air. So that would be absolutely spectacular if you could find that for the Aurora Borealis. And then if you could find something that's a little bit more earth toned or like greeny and browny for the deer and the pine trees, and perhaps something a little bit more plain for the actual neck design as well. That could be a really good design. Oh my goodness, I might have to put that on my queue at some point. Oh, I've got too many projects. Next up we have a fairly simple sweater but quite complex in its colour work. This is the Galaxy sweater by Beyond Fond. This is available on Etsy, but she does have a Ravelry listing for it, and it's available for $5, so it's definitely one of the more affordable patterns that I have ever seen. And in terms of the reviews, it seems to be quite a good pattern. In general, it features a dropped sweater construction, so you work the body in the round and then you sort of work flat for the top part, which I know can seem quite intimidating, especially with a colourwork pattern like this, but I can assure you purling colourwork is definitely not that as difficult as a lot of influencers want you to think that it is. It is a lot easier than you realise. I promise you it will be over before you've even realised. Following on from there, it seems like you pick up stitches and then work the sleeves going down to the cuff, but I'm not entirely sure. There isn't much of a description. She recommends using the Premier Yarns Cotton Fair Solid, which is a sport weight or a 5-ply yarn, but I think for a Christmas gift I would go with something that's a little bit more rustic, a little bit more woolly and warm. So something like, oh, let's think, Letlopi, oh not Letlopi, that's not sport weight. Oh, I don't know that many sport weight yarns, but I think you can maybe get away with a DK weight actually, and that could work pretty well. I'm trying to think what we could use. I know what we could use. I was literally putting these in my cart to buy, and then I had to actually restrain myself. I was thinking of using the Drop Sky. Mainly, first of all, it was on special offer, but it features a really nice chain structure that I've never worked with before, and it's got a little bit more of a an alpaca sort of haze to it, which I thought would work really nice with this kind of colour work and allow it to blend together the colours a little bit better and allow it to move as one fabric, which can be a little bit tricky when you've got some very non-repetitive colour work designs like this. Where you've got a lot of space and a lot of floats. It can be a little bit difficult for some people to, I guess, match their tension pretty well. So for something like this, going with something a little bit more woolly could work really nicely. Okay, we have got one more design, and this I was also almost about to purchase the yarn at 3 AM before my senses kicked in and I said, hold up, we've got plenty of yarn. Let's work our other projects first and then get round to this later on. And this is the Stars in a Summer's Sky sweater by Cindy Craft. And honestly, I am speechless with this colourwork pattern. It is absolutely spectacular. I love how there is so much variation and uniqueness with this colourwork around the yoke, which I've never seen anything like this before. And that every section is different, so it doesn't repeat that much. It really feels very organic and just absolutely stunning. And another thing I really like about this pattern is that for the background yarns, you actually sort of gradient it out, so you have multiple colours that you then switch between each of them, so it kind of looks like you're going from sunset to astronomical twilight, which is so smart. It works perfectly with the colourwork design. Why have I never done this for a sweater? But anyways, she recommends using Subito Farm Estabrook, which is a DK weight yarn. What's great about DK is that there are thousands of DK weight yarns available across the world, so you will definitely find something that will fit for this sweater. I personally was thinking of going with something that already has its own gradient, and that is a little bit more difficult to find, like a really good gradient yarn that doesn't really marl, so it actually transitions really, really softly and gradually. I was thinking of going with one of Kauni Yarns, and this is a small Estonian company that do really, really spectacular gradient yarns in various colorways, in various sort of, you know, there's so much. They have so many different options. It is more of a 4-ply weight, if I recall, but if you're very good with doubling up your yarn and can align the colours well, you could probably get away with it. I'm not sure. I'll think about it, and then when I cast on the project and work it up, I'll let you guys know, similarly to the socks. This pattern is available for $9, and it has quite a few sizes ranging from a 33-inch bust up to a 53-inch bust for the final measurements. So there is definitely something for everyone, and I am really impressed that she managed to even grade up the sweater, given that there is so much variation in the colour work. It must have been quite difficult to come up with a pattern that can size up like that. So this is definitely fantastic craftsmanship. Okay, I have done enough yapping. I shall see you in the next video. I think we're going to stick to more of a catch-up style video because I'm about to write a very big paper and I would really like to discuss some of the really important results. So yeah, I shall see you in the next video very soon.